So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our fourth day of the Metta Convention week. So far, it's been such an incredible week, and tonight I think is going to be another incredible evening together as well. So thank you to all the venerables who have come and joined us today. So grateful to have your time and sharing your wisdom with all of us. And thank you to all of the participants who've joined us as well. Tonight, we are blessed with three really amazing speakers. Venerable Juwei, I Karunika, Venerable Pema Düddul. We will be exploring a very interesting topic, and the topic is called Between Everything and Nothing, Cultivating Compassion and Wisdom. What does all this mean? Well, our speakers will be unpacking various themes from this topic, and also we'll be having an interactive discussion with everyone as well. So if you have any questions, then feel free to ask those questions. Those who are online, you can put your questions into the chat. And for those who are here in person with us, then you can just write it onto a piece of paper and pass that along. If you're also on our WhatsApp group, you can also post the questions there as well. We always love to make these sessions interactive and make this special for everyone. And so where does this topic comes from? So it's actually a quote from Nisargadatta, and it's called Nothing and Everything. And what it says is this. So love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. Between the two, my life flows. Very beautiful. But in particularly, we want to talk about compassion and wisdom, the two wings of a bird for us to take flight with our practice. So to start us off, I wish to first invite Venerable Pema Düddul to give us a short opening as to her interpretation of this particular topic. So for those who don't know, Venerable was born in England. She was educated at universities in Cambridge and London. She actually left a high-powered financial career to explore the traditions of yoga and meditation, and this ultimately led her to the Buddhist practice. And then she went to Bhutan, and with the help of her Lama, she became the first Western woman to be ordained as a Getsuma in Bhutan, and that was in 2014. And now here she is. She's written her book, her first book called Set Free. That's available online as well as for you to obtain in bookstores. And the proceeds from that UK book is donated to the charity. So it's quite amazing just to know about her practice and her journey. And we're so delighted to have Venerable Pema Düddul here with us. So Venerable, can I invite you for an opening about this topic, Nothing and Everything, about wisdom and compassion? Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Lovely to see everybody. I'm obviously a very peaceful person. I'm also quite a fast-moving person. So our introducer here is Mr. Chapter, and I think it's quite important. So if you weren't aware, in Bhutan last year, we had the historic event of fully ordaining females as Gelongmas, or Bhikkhunis, we can call them. This is something which has actually never occurred in the Himalayas before. And Bhutan took the extremely courageous step to do this, feeling that, as the J. Kempo said, that if the Buddha was looking down and seeing this now, he would be smiling and very joyful at this progression in the development of Dharma in the world. So our introducers kindly mentioned the Getsuma vows in 2014 in the Drukpa Kagyu tradition, but actually I'm very honored to have taken part in an extraordinary 5-day ceremony in Bhutan at the base of Taksang last year to become a Gelongma. And I feel at this time, with so many inspiring female practitioners arising in the world for the benefit of beings, I think it's important just to share that wonderful news with you all in case you're not aware of it. So that's, first of all, I'd like to say that. Yeah. So My personal specialism is really the practice of compassion, which in the Himalayan tradition is, how can you say, personified or imagined for our conceptual mind in the form of Chenrezig and the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. And I think I'm speaking about that on Saturday, actually, if I consult my diary correctly. So if you want to know more about the specifics of how Vajrayana works, of the practice of visualization and mantra from a Vajrayana perspective, then please do attend that and throw all your questions at me. In terms of this extraordinary title, Everything and Nothing, I think actually what comes to mind first when we hear this is that these sound like apparent extremes. And so firstly, when I heard this phrase, it sounds like it's encouraging the mind to go to a fixed point of extreme, a fixed point of everythingness, a fixed point of nothingness, when we put those two in a sentence. And of course, that's very reassuring for the human mind. You know, got it, everything, got it, nothing, right? It really has no nuance in some way. And so when we study the middle way, the teachings of the middle way arising from Prajnaparamita Sutra into Nagarjuna and into Chandrakriti, we really examine the risk of clinging to everythingness as an idea and clinging to nothingness as an idea. And, the teachings that go beyond that. So first of all, I would just bring that idea to mind in terms of the nuance of the middle way, which does not cling to extremes. Whenever we come from a more ultimate truth perspective, we may mention those extremes, but we need to be aware of not falling into them. One of the texts that I just absolutely adore is the text on the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva. And maybe many of you know this beautiful text, which summarizes how to be this courageous being in the world, a being with the mind and the aspiration to become a fully completed Bodhisattva for the benefit of all beings. And this text is written in homage to Chenrezig. When we read text, we always want to see who are we paying homage to at the beginning of the text to see what kind of direction we're going in. And this 37 practices of a Bodhisattva pays homage to Chenrezig. Yeah. And I just put my glasses on to show you how intelligent I am. And they won't be on for very long. And so the start of this text, if you haven't read it before, describes Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion, of completed compassion, who has, from the Vajrayana point of view, is seen to have attained Buddhahood, but returned to the 10th Bodhisattva level in order to help other beings. This is how it's described in my tradition, so maybe different in yours, but just to make you aware of that, yeah. So these first two lines, I think, are interesting in relation to this topic. It says, though he sees, that's referring to Chenrezig, it's given a gender, let's not go there. Though he sees that in all phenomena there is no coming, which is like existing, kind of the everything bit, or going, which is the non-existence, the nothingness bit, he strives solely for the sake of beings. Okay, so this is talking about attaining the wisdom which is beyond grasping at true existence or grasping at non-existence, and based on that understanding, purely working solely for the benefit of all sentient beings. Yeah, how does that sound to people? Because I don't know if in your tradition you haven't studied this, or so do put a question in the chat or a response in the chat. I'm sure our moderator will help to share that with me. So this is really working to speaking about the spontaneously naturally arising stability of compassion which does not fade, does not fall back, does not have resentment, does not have partiality. It says he strives solely. It's in the Tibetan, it's like, let's check the Tibetan actually, hold on a second here. Gangi Chogunjo, Meizi Kyang, Joy Dunla Chik Tu Sunzepa. So it's Chik Tu, so it's like the only thing the mind of compassion is doing, the only thing, the one thing is to work for the sake of being. So that capacity has arisen from the wisdom which realizes there is no clinging to true existence or clinging to an idea of non-existent as if it's a true thing. Yeah. So this is in this text how it begins to point us in that direction of how wisdom and compassion are inseparable. Yeah. Let me see. What else may I like to say on this topic? That was my main contribution at this stage before other venerables spoke, and then addressing questions. So if anybody has any comment or questions at this point, otherwise I'm going to return to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Venerable Pema Düddul. There's no questions at the moment.
Okay.
So if there's nothing else then from you, then I'm going to move to the next speaker. Was there any other things that you would like to share with us about this topic for now? No? Okay.
To me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk on compassion for a long time, but I think it's more interesting to hear what the audience might want to know about the subjects of wisdom and compassion, and their inseparable nature, as I've described there, are huge topics, and we could live together for a week on this Zoom potentially. So I think it's better to listen to some questions which come through. Yeah.
Okay. So for the audience, we have Venerable for a short period of time. So she will be leaving in about 15 minutes or so. So for those who have any questions for her, now's a good time to ask. So is there any questions in the audience here as well as those online for Venerable?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions on Vajrayana practice, how it is in Bhutan, or the Gelongma ordination that I've mentioned, pretty much anything other than how to parallel park a car, you can just throw it at me. Yeah.
Is her book out? Okay, so we have a question here, which is your book out?
Oh, yeah, my book's been out for a while now. Thank you very much for asking about that. It describes my journey to becoming ordained initially in Bhutan, and it's called Set Free, and it's in a few different languages now, and it's the charity that I founded to help special needs children in Bhutan. That was the main reason for writing the book, and it's not a dull book. You can see I'm a person of sense of humor with short sentences, and I don't hang around, and the book's pretty much like that. So it's not a boring book, I can reassure you. And you can find it on Amazon and Kindle and Audible, and it's done a lot of good in this world. If you're interested in my charity, you can see the good that it's done helping many children in Bhutan. Yeah. So feel free to inundate all your relatives at Christmas time with my book. Don't hold back. Yeah.
Amazing. And we've just placed the link in the chat. And for those who are watching this on YouTube later, you can also see this in the description below as well. Great. Okay. All right. So perhaps, Venerable, you can tell us a little bit more then about the charity work that you've been doing, because I find that very inspiring. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't expect to found a charity. I really didn't. It didn't even really occur to me. But I think the practice of compassion has kind of seeped into my bones a little bit. And then, you know, I had these circumstances where somehow it just kind of came alive to the point that I thought, I must do something. I must do something here. And it's not that it's other than my formal practice, but you know, when we talk about formal practice, we talk about taking the heat of your formal practice and continuing the heat of it in your everyday life. And I feel like this is one example where the heat generated by my practice continued into daily activity and this founding of the charity. I think if you're going to found a charity, you need that kind of, something needs to connect at that point, and you think, right, I have the courage, I must act. It's like that, I must act, right? And so yeah, I founded this charity, and we've raised, I don't know, it's like about £600,000 now, and we've helped hundreds of children, and it's extremely hard work, and it's probably, I feel like, the best thing I ever did in my life, and it makes me feel like I'm not a fake or a fraud, that somehow my practice is not you can kind of just for me or something, and it makes sure that I keep testing, has my practice become selfish in some way? You know, is my practice really more with the spirit of wishing to be a bodhisattva and help many beings? So it's reassuring to me.
And Venerable, would you say that because of that, that real calling that you must do it, and also those reflections that you're doing this selflessly as opposed to, as you were reflecting, not out of selfish reasons, perhaps that's also a manifestation of this topic, which is about compassion and wisdom coming together and making this real and making this as something that you can offer to the world?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you remember, well, if not if you remember, but from a Vajrayana point of view or a Sutrayana point of view, also, we can summarize the qualities of compassion and wisdom within the 6 paramitas as we study them. Yeah, so the skillful means or compassion is placed as the first 5 paramitas, and then wisdom is the 6th. And the wisdom which realizes the nature of reality, realizes the inherently empty nature of reality, is the 6th. But the first 5 are generosity, ethical conduct, whatever that's appropriate for your precept, patience, extremely difficult practice, enthusiastic diligence, and meditative concentration. And so all of these 5 make up skillful means or compassion. And then, so they all need to be sealed with the understanding of emptiness, which gives you that quality of not giving up, because you've understood what in front of you is rainbow-like. Yeah. So from a Vajrayana point of view, then, you know, when you say the word compassion, we have these elements in there. And I think it's interesting to explore that, because yes, we can say compassion is loving kindness. Yeah, definitely we can. But we can also look at the facets of it in terms of generosity, ethical conduct, patience, etc., and the meditative concentration. That's coming in that category. Yeah, it's not coming in the wisdom category, interestingly enough. So can't remember what I was saying now, but I hope that's interesting to have clarified that point with you. Yeah. So yes.
That's great, thank you. We have another question. So someone has asked, would Pamela talk about bearing witness and listening deeply versus giving advice or instruction?
Can you just repeat that very, very, very interesting question again? Sorry, can you just repeat it for me?
Certainly. So balancing the two. So one is, can you talk about bearing witness and listening deeply versus giving advice or instruction?
Very interesting question. Giving advice, people love advice and giving instruction. Okay, all right. So, that I think, we know from the example of the Buddha, this 84,000 teachings. I'm sure you know that 84,000 is just a number for a very big number. It's not that somebody was writing down, okay, that's teaching number 1, that's teaching number 2, that's teaching number 3. We know from the example of the Buddha was very skillful in his teachings, very flexible. He listened deeply to what people needed at that stage, isn't it? And this is why the Buddha gave many, many teachings, even to the extent that some of them appear to contradict each other. That's a result of that capacity to listen deeply and give the medicine required at that moment, right? This is how you see some differences in the mind-only school versus the middle way. This is arisen from these differences in teachings, for example. So his example seems to be very much for us to listen deeply and with compassion give what is needed for that being at that moment. So I think all of us as practitioners and teachers need to bear that in mind. When I think of listening deeply, my small attempts to listen deeply, I think one of the results of some practice can be that because your own mind is much clearer and calmer and less agitated, you have less internal conversation going on in your own mind. That allows you to be present for beings in front of you and to listen in an undistracted way. Now, I can remember before I did not so much practice, somehow it was extremely hard to listen deeply because I had some kind of own thinking, own things going on in my mind, right? So you can't really give that space for listening deeply if you are yourself preoccupied with your own worries or thoughts or whatever. So I would say that giving advice is something that people like to ask of monastics. So this is an interesting one. Giving instruction may well be totally appropriate, particularly when you're a teacher and you have students and you have to instruct them on things, how to do the sadhana of Chenrezig, how to do a prostration, what prayer to do with a prostration, when to use your bell and dorje, what is a smoke offering. We have to inform, to keep the Dharma alive. We bear some role as teachers, so we do have to give instruction. So I would say that is different. And when through all my years of being taught in Bhutan, I have no doubt of it that lamas, khenpos, and eminent teachers in Bhutan, they definitely give instruction. They definitely give instruction in a very clear, pithy, unfuzzy way. Have no doubt of that. Yeah. In terms of giving advice, I think it's a more tricky one. It was very fascinating to look in depth at all the vows that are part of the Gelongma ordination, a full ordination, and this vow would apply to both men and women. There's a specific vow where you're not supposed to get involved if a man and a woman or partnership, it's just described in that way at that time, are having marital problems. A vow is that you're not supposed to offer advice or get involved. I thought that was a very interesting vow. I have to say I'm not sure that I'm following it perfectly because sometimes the Bodhisattva vow, which is higher than those Vinaya vows, may come in, and for the benefit of beings, you may wish to then give some help, some advice. So we have these 3 sets of vows: Vinaya vows, Bodhisattva vows, and tantric vows. And one of our prayers says, please, may I have the wisdom to know which vow to listen to at this point, and to act from. And so with this question of should we give advice or whatever, it's usually going to be a point at which I'm going to consider which vow to listen to before I make a decision at that moment. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's quite burdensome, and I think it'd be interesting to hear from the other venerables. When you're a venerable, you're doing your best with what you have. You're not perfect. You're not a Buddha. Yeah. And so but it's very easy for the love, devotion, and respect of others to mistake you for a perfect being at points, as if you have the answer to everything. And it can feel like a pressure, and it can become a form of projection from others. I think it's important to remain humble and honest with people. If you can help them, you will. If you can understand, you will. But don't get confused between an enlightened being and a simple practitioner like myself. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Venerable Pema Deki. Always lovely to hear you speak. In fact, one of the participants actually said that she doesn't necessarily have a question, but she just loves hearing your voice and what you say, which is really lovely.
Oh, thank you. I really love making friends. You know, I'm a really super friendly person. So this is why I like just spontaneously asking questions. I feel like we get to know each other more, and we have some greater connection than if I do some big speech and then you go away and you think, I can't remember what she said, you know. So yeah, so should I say goodbye now? I'm so sorry. I had this international visitor coming to meet me, and she'd arranged it a long time ago. But is somebody else asking is there another question there before I go?
Someone just said, it seems that the emphasis of Buddhist monks is on doing their own practice and teach their interpretation of Buddhism, whereas in other religions, example, Christianity, Hinduism, Islamic, Sikhism, the religious leaders place a strong emphasis on serving the community by providing hospitals, schools, libraries, etc.
I think such a good question. Yeah. Yeah. Does he want me just to talk about that? Is it?
Perhaps if you have that time. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Until she knocks on my door, I was going to stay with you guys, you know. So I just wasn't quite sure when she's turning up from Holland. It's a very good observation. And actually, I had somebody else I was at school with, born in Sri Lanka, and she said to me, she gave up being Buddhist. She was Buddhist by birth, and she gave up being Buddhist and she became Christian. Whereas I grew up, I was never Christian, I have to say. I didn't ever find out the right path for me, but I grew up in a Christian culture, and now somehow I've ended up, you know, Buddhist. And so she said to me, I just felt that monks, they didn't get involved in the community. They didn't act in that way. And she found that the Christian approach was much more practical, much more in the community, etc. And for that reason, she felt, you know, she preferred that way. I think that it's a tricky thing, because as monastics, we hold that, you know, we have this role to play in terms of holding the Dharma, which takes quite a lot of study, and we need to study and be taught well in order to be appropriate vessels carrying the Dharma forward. Now that actually takes a lot of time and effort. There's just a huge amount to learn. You know, it's just, you know, whenever you deeply get involved in Dharma, you just think, oh my goodness, I really need to live for 500 years. There are so many sutras, there are so many tantras, there are so many fascinating things to understand about this profound path that's been described. So I think we have to, and in Asia, people tend to really understand this, that monastics need to become competent. Otherwise, they might not guide people well. Yeah. And a part of that, and also they need to be able to be distant from worldly life. They need to have the capacity to renounce and all the mental results that come from that, the mental freedom which comes from that. So I think there is that. I think actually, if you look at the highest practitioners in the Tibetan tradition, and I can mainly only talk on that tradition, many Rinpoches, high Khenpos, etc. Actually, they tend to have foundations, and they tend to do much more things in the community. What you don't tend to find so much is everyday monks and nuns having the capacity to do that, and that's because they are living in quite a structured hierarchy, and they're maybe behind walls, and their teacher is more interested in them becoming a profound practitioner and a true understander of Dharma for the benefit of everyone. So if every monk went to their Khenpo and said, hey, I fancy forming a charity, or I fancy going to do this, it would kind of create chaos. But it definitely happens. But I would say it doesn't happen for until a lot of practice and learning has been accomplished, and then maybe, once lamas, rinpoches are fully taught, then it probably happens more.
Wonderful answer. Thank you so much, Venerable. I think that we probably should let you go. We're very grateful.
Okay. All right. Well, lovely to see everyone. I hope something helped there. And I'm sure you're going to learn so many interesting things from the other Venerables here. So thank you for inviting me, and maybe see you on Saturday. It's going to be an extremely early talk for me. I have to get up for 5:30 in the UK. So if you want to see me talking very slowly, then with maybe more mumbling, then do join on Saturday.
Thank you so much, Pema.
Okay.
See you next time.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Okay, so we will now turn to Venerable Ju Wei. So for those who don't know, Venerable Dr. Ju Wei, she's been an ordained monastic and a Buddhist studies scholar for over 20 years. Prior to her ordination, Venerable Ju Wei applied research in artificial intelligence and business process re-engineering in the Singapore government for over 10 years. And Venerable Ju Wei is now the head of program for Applied Buddhist Studies and Humanistic Buddhism, as well as the director of the Humanistic Buddhism Centre at the Nun Tien Institute in Australia, where I think she's zooming in from. So, Venerable, it is so lovely to have you here, and thank you for your presence. And also, we would love to hear your thoughts about this really interesting topic on between everything and nothing, cultivating compassion and wisdom. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Tina. Your introduction simply means that I'm very old. That's not, I don't have enough wisdom. I definitely don't have enough compassion. And that's why it's called cultivating. I'm just on this path of, I'm just a little baby. And I love your topic because it says between everything and nothing. And I can assure you I'm close to nothing. Great markers, Tina. One of the things that I think of when I see your topic about cultivating compassion and wisdom is something which my teacher, the late Venerable Master Xing Yun, taught us. He says that, okay, all of you here, so he had 1,500 of us, and he tells us, okay, you don't need to be very clever, you don't need to have a lot of skills, but there's one thing you mustn't lose, and that, he says, is compassion. So that started my quest of, really, what does he mean by compassion? That is so important that we can lose everything except compassion. Because I come from the Singapore meritocratic government where IQ is extremely important. Meritocratic, it means that you have to get A. I mean, A is not good enough, you got to get A+. And we come from a competitive environment. What does love and compassion got to do with survival at that stage? So it was a really major paradigm shift for me. And one of the reasons I decided to ordain under this venerable master, I mean, somebody with no hair and this ancient robes, I mean, why would I give my life up for something like that when I was very comfortable in the Singapore government? I think it's because he turns a lot of my thinking on my head. So it's like from everything to nothing. Let me give you a story. One day, the first day, I was in Fo-Guang-Shan Buddhist College. So I went there to learn about Buddhism. So they say, oh, you go to the Buddhist college. And the admission age, the cutoff is 35 years old. And I was 34 and a half. I squeezed myself in. The first night there, you know, as a Buddhist college student, you're not supposed to go out. It was Chinese New Year and they let us students out. And there I was in my clean uniform, walking down the streets, and a monastic was picking up litter. And she looked at me and I must look brand new, right? So she says, why are you here? So I go like, oh, why am I here? And I didn't even think about it. And I just say, I want to find myself. I was so surprised with my brilliant answer. I thought it was really good. I want to find myself, right? My true nature or whatever. This particular venerable just looked at me and said, you want to find yourself? So what did she do? She picked up a piece of litter like she was doing. And then she looked at it and she says, this is you. I was filled with, at that time, 1 bachelor's, 2 master's degree. And I've worked in the Singapore government for over 10 years. And here she says, what? This is me, garbage. But the next thing she did was worse. She put me into her bin. And then she walked away. Oh no. Now that served as my gong'an. You know, koan, gong'an. For the rest of my life, I'm still wondering. I was everything and then I became nothing because I was just trash. So that was really my introduction into Buddhism, into the Dharma, and learning that, what is really, really important is this emptiness. But emptiness is not nothingness. I have come to understand emptiness as boundless creativity, the ability to do everything as a result of being empty of who I think I am, which is where I will get stuck. And this is where I want to answer, I think, Umesh Garg's question about whether monastics just sit in a corner doing their own practice. If that were the case, I'm sorry, I wouldn't have become a monastic because I just need to have fun. So what does having fun mean? It has to be meaningful and it has to involve less suffering. So humanistic Buddhism, which is what the late Venerable Master Xing Yun teaches, is that we have to be among humans. We have to bring joy to people, and we have to bring joy to people. We have to be joyful ourselves. If we have to bring kindness and compassion to others, we need to learn self-love and self-compassion. So that was the beginning of me understanding what it means to be a gift to others. So my name, Jue Wei, I think is the beginning of my journey. Jue means awakening, and Wei means a precious piece of jade. So I believe that my teacher gave me that name to be aware of the fact that I should be a precious piece of jade. And what does that mean? That means that I have to see the goodness in everything around me. Not that I am above everybody else. No, I can't be anyway. As I say, I'm nothing. I'm just trash. But the fact that if I can see goodness in everybody else, definitely life will be so beautiful and so much more fun. Therefore, there will be less struggling, and therefore we'll learn to love. So I have the benefit of being the Nantian Institute for the last 11 years to learn how to teach. And I realized that learning how to teach is learning how to love my students, my peers, and always receiving the gifts of their assessments. Hunting assessment is not easy, but I recognize the gift of how much effort our students take to do their assessments. I think that what's the for Guangshan, where I'm ordaining, where I'm Mahayana, so a greater vehicle tradition, what we have done is that the master has had 400 different non-profit enterprises. So we do a lot of work, and there are 1,500 of us. And if you always ask me, I always say there's never enough of us, because that means there's only less than a handful of us in every one of these enterprises. So what does it mean? It means we need lots of volunteers. So my friends, you are all belonging to Gen V. Gen V. V for, this is the interesting part. V for vow. I vow to, there's the Bodhicitta vow, the vow to get enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. Second V is the V to volunteer, because in order to be able to make that vow, the next thing is to put in action. So what do? Volunteer. And the third V is victory. Is what? Against our self-centeredness, the thing that we are the top of the world. I mean, my trash gongan has stayed with me all the time, reminding me all the time about nothingness and emptiness, and that boundless creativity as a result of emptying myself. I think that's the Mahayana Buddhist tradition of learning about this boundlessness. So I guess that's enough from me. I hope that's okay with Tina and friends.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Venerable. And I always love your creativity in how you're able to share Buddhism and the message and inspire us. And I love Gen V now. Yay, we're all part of it. Friends, I thought now that we do have two speakers who aren't running away, what we'll do is we'll hear from Ikarunika, and then we'll do the question and answers and have more of a panel discussion, which I think will be really wonderful. So thank you again, Venerable Jue. We'll come back to you shortly. So friends, I would now like to introduce you to our next speaker, Ikarunika. Ikarunika is currently the senior resident monastic at Santi Forest Monastery, and she's been a monastic life for over 12 years. And she received her full ordination as a Bhikkhuni in 2014 at Dharmasara Nuns Monastery in Western Australia. There she lived and trained for over a decade with Ayya Hasapanya. She's also a student of Ajahn Brahm and Ajahn Brahmali. She has a PhD in microbiology and worked as a scientist prior to her ordination. So really, we've got an array of different backgrounds and experiences and expertise with our speakers today. So grateful. So Ayya, you've heard quite a lot already from the other speakers, but perhaps from another perspective, if you could share about the topic today. So between everything and nothing, between action and wisdom.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you so much for organizing this amazing convention, which is a benefit for so many people of all walks of life. And it's really lovely to have heard from other traditions. And it's always nice to have a variety of approaches to this very vast subject. It's pretty much all of Buddhism, wisdom and compassion. Yeah. Now, would you all agree that wise people are kind? Is that true? Are wise people kind? How about are kind people wise? What is the relationship? Interesting, isn't it? Interesting relationship to think about.
Yeah.
Wisdom and compassion. And then comes to everything and nothing.
Yeah.
In that thing, it is the nothing was referring to non-self aspect. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I wanted to share something from the Theravada. Probably this is also in the Mahayana Suttas. This is called removing resentment. It's a good topic. In a way, we all have problems from time to time dealing with people and difficulties and difficult people. And there the Buddha talks about 5 different types of people. And he says how to remove resentment with all of these 5 different types. So is there a time limit, or can I speak a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the first kind of person here is somebody who is bad with their bodily conduct. That is, they could be killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, or various things done that are harmful and hurtful for oneself and other by body. But their speech is quite nice. There are people who still speak kindly, truthfully. They can do these things. There are people like that. And then there are people who are really bad with their speech. Like they lie, they break people up, all these kinds of stuff. But they're very good with their bodily behavior. Since it's not a lot of time, I just talk about the second person that I spoke about. It's very similar kind of pattern that the Buddha is saying. The Buddha is saying, now you are thirsty and it's a really hot day. And if you're thirsty and really hot day, you come across a pond, a pool, but it's covered with algae. What should you do? Complain about the algae infested pool, or push away the algae with your hands, with cupped hands, take some cool water and drink. What the Buddha is trying to say here is, yes, when you sometimes meet people, they have a variety of good and bad. Our normal reaction is to point to their bad, or he's a robber, or a liar, or whatever it is that we see, that 1 or 2 bad things, we point that, but we fail to look the good qualities of the person, which is like the big pond of water. We look at the little bit of algae and point and sort of shut them down, throw them out, right? No compassion, opposite. We get angry, irritated, upset with this. So the Buddha is telling, for us what is important is to see any good qualities of the person, associate them with a good side. So, but the point that I want to come to is not the third person, even the fourth person. Okay, that is where the compassion is coming. But anyway, because it's nice to talk about the sutta, at least a little bit complete. So the third person is somebody who is not really good with their body and speech, but still from time to time they might have some kind thoughts coming up, or they might meditate. There are people like that too, So then again, it's a hot day and you are thirsty, and you are coming across a little muddy puddle. So if you try to drink water with cupped hands, what would you drink? Mud. But if you're thirsty, then you go down on all your fours and lick the top layer of water, which is clean, and quench your thirst. So again, this is about looking even really hard into people and look for their good qualities instead of focusing on the bad. This is developing compassion by understanding, right? But fourth person is interesting. Now, fourth person is the all bad kind of person. Really hard to meet this kind of people for us in the day. Really, many people we meet have many good qualities. But let's say there are these kinds of people in the world. You hear about occasionally people who are completely heartless and doing really terrible things. So if you see such a person, most of the time, our natural response is anger, right? Anger, you don't accept them, you wish them not so good things because you feel what a terrible thing they're doing for the world and for themselves. But the Buddha says no, right? The Buddha says, look at this person as a person who is walking on a highway, again on a really hot day, but the person is quite sick and they are not going to be reaching the town that they're walking to, and they're probably going to pass away without having received any support. So what kind of feeling do you have if you don't know who this person is? But when you see somebody who's really sick and trying to look for support, but they're going to fall and you are probably not able to help, but you see that. What is your response? Compassion, right? You feel kindness, you want to try and help. But that is if you just see without anything else. But when you see these people who have done really bad things in the world, then it is really hard to forgive. But this is where the conditioning comes in. So you understand, why is this person doing what they are doing? So if you actually try to investigate, you come to understand it is, as one of the fundamental Buddhist principles is that, yes, we have a choice, but our choice is conditioned. So unfortunately, these people who are doing really terrible things in the world, their choices have been conditioned by, not with wisdom, but the opposite of it, like greed, hatred, and delusion. The people they associate, the education they got, the views and concepts they took on board, that is what made who they are, right? So we are, when you look at this non-self teaching of the Buddha, you understand we are like robots, programmed by an unfathomable past, living out our thing, yet our intentional actions have consequences. So even this person is pretty much even out of control because if they are heavily conditioned to do and behave in this way. So we are not saying what they're doing is right, but we understand why they're doing it. But more importantly, we understand they have to reap the karmic consequences of their actions. So such a person, when they pass away, what would be their destination? Not a good one, right? If they've been all bad. It's such a terrible destination to be going. So when you realize that, you say, good, they deserve it, terrible person, they should go and suffer? Not really, because you understand they were conditioned by the past. Things that happened, maybe they were a victim of abuse, some trauma, maybe they went through World War or something really difficult, or they have mental health issues as well. So no person in their right mind would do things that are hurtful for themselves and others. If you see anybody doing like that, you can be sure about this conditional process and what made them who they are. This is understanding that non-self aspect. And when you do that, what are you growing in? You are growing in wisdom, right? You are growing in understanding, because this is right view. This is building up right view on non-self. So when you look at the world, look at the people through this right view, through wisdom, what is your natural response? Compassion. Because and this is your difficult person at work, the bully, or your difficult whoever that you have to deal with. May not be a really terrible person, still somebody who's giving a hard time to you. Our natural response is you don't want to shut them out, get rid of them, don't want to deal with them, have lots of difficult emotions related to them. Even anxiety and fear can come up when you have to be in their presence. But if you actually take a step back and try to understand the person and see also their good side, because a lot of our difficult people are not all bad people. Our difficult people always have many other good qualities. So in fact, when you see that and also understand whatever that is unskillful, that is hurtful, that is coming out from this person is conditioned. You don't take it personally. You don't take it personally, you see. And instead of anger and irritation, you respond with compassion. So this is how, for each and every person that we meet, wherever they are, that you are able to, because it's one thing to say, yeah, we should love everybody, we should have compassion to everybody. But try to do it sometimes is hard. When we especially see these bad qualities, difficult qualities, harmful qualities in people, it is really hard to bring up compassion and kindness and truly wish these people well. But when you reflect back and look through your right view, like the glasses of right view, and understand their suffering. Actually, these people who are difficult for compassion to arouse, they are suffering enormously. Sometimes they do what they do are to relieve their own suffering, but in their big, state of suffering, they can't see how much suffering they're causing others. But when we try to see this, when we try to understand it, this is all based on wisdom, right? This is coming from the aspect of wisdom. Natural response is compassion. Quite a beautiful way to live life, a beautiful way to relate to people, especially relationships, close as well as distant. That idea of us being conditioned. And also, what about me? Self-compassion, because we can forgive, love other people, be kind to others, but we can often beat ourselves up. I am not good enough. How could I do this? How could I said that? And really unforgiving. Again, I too am conditioned from my past, the way I am, who I am, what I do. So when you realize about yourself, you also bring up a lot of compassion for your own self. And this is really important, like Venerable Jive said, like how can you be kind to others before you have kindness to yourself? If you are not able to accept yourself for who you are, build up kindness within for yourself, it is impossible to really, truly, give that to others. So, but how does this compassion truly comes up? Is through building up wisdom. That is building up right view. So in this topic, especially about non-self, understanding people. So it is really a very beautiful topic in this regard. But the other thing that I said is also important. So we can see that wise people are kind because they understand human condition. They can relate to that part of that wisdom. However, kind people may not necessarily be wise. Now, this is an important thing for us to notice because sometimes we do things in the name of kindness. But is it truly kind? Or is it coming from my sense of self? So this is not self, this is coming from a sense of self, ulterior motivation sometimes. Or we could be misunderstood. Or we do things because of fear of hurting another. Sometimes the Buddha says, he too have to speak words that are a little bit hurtful, maybe in the short term. But that is for the benefit of the long term.
That's called tough love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you have to do it in the right way, in a kind way, but not speaking, not telling when you need to tell something to somebody, which may be difficult. But if you don't say it, actually they get into much more trouble. So is that compassion not to say, or is it compassion to say that thing? That in the beginning sounds like not compassion. How could you say that? But this is where sometimes our motivation, where is it coming from? Sometimes you don't want to be the bad guy. You want to be the goody, so you never want to tell anybody anything because they might not be your friend anymore. So, so it is really important to understand about them. But if you're coming always from wisdom, then that would be okay. But other times we could do things, but not necessarily wise. So compassion without wisdom can be quite dangerous.
They call it idiotic compassion.
Exactly. It is, isn't it? And it gets you and other people into trouble.
Yeah.
Not out of, because compassion should lead people out of trouble.
Yeah.
And into harmony, peace. But we see this in the world. So it's nice to bring that up into our minds. I shall stop there.
Thank you so much, Aya. Very, very thorough explanation about the relationship between compassion and wisdom, between kindness and wisdom. It's interesting because I was actually thinking about that earlier question you were asking about kindness and wisdom. So someone who's wise would also be kind. Someone who is unwise may also be unkind as well. Someone who's unkind is also not wise. But as you say, someone who's kind may not be wise. So the four tetrads of that. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I can see, Venerable Jive, you've been very busy during this period because we've got some friends online who've asked questions about reincarnation. So by the way, that's happening. And Venerable Jive has been excellent in responding to all of that. But because the people who are here and those online aren't available to read the chat, Venerable Jive, if you don't mind, could you share with us the question and some of your thoughts about reincarnation while we're talking about everything and nothing.
I was just about to type my response to all the interesting chat stream that's going on about rebirth and reincarnation. The first thought that came to my mind is, well, if exploration into rebirth and reincarnation will make us kinder and more compassionate, go for it. Then the next thing that came to my mind was, in Mahayana Buddhism, samsara and nirvana are just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
So what's more important is for us to be able to live well in the current moment. And at this point in life, we know that we are a culmination of a lot of conditions. And if we can be grateful to those conditions, whether from our past lives or not, but if we could just be grateful to those boundless conditions that allow us to be on Zoom at this very moment, to be on site. Just think of the hard work of the Metta Center team over the past few months. That's right. And I think that will help us live fully. And then with that fullness, we move on in our lives and allow our karma to take us to our next step.
That's such a beautiful answer. So the question that someone asked about was that they found it difficult to find a rational basis for acceptance of reincarnation. So that's a really beautiful way to see it, Venerable Jue, and also to really embrace, even if we aren't sure, but even if we can live in a way where it benefits us in this life, that is going to, if not anything, that's going to inspire us and help us.
I'll just add that this us is not just me, but this us is all.
Yeah. Yeah, and so in the Theravada tradition, Aya, we also have something similar, like the Kalpa Sutta, where whether or not it exists, whether it does exist, it can be of benefit. Can you explain a bit more about that to answer? So if someone has questions about rebirth and reincarnation, then what's a way that we can respond to them about those questions and queries?
This is about believing rebirth or not?
Yeah,
that's a good question, a rational basis, because this is a question that I've been asked by often with young people, interestingly. Yeah, because sometimes some people just take it on board by faith or whatever, but young people do question this. So when I had a session with them, one thing that I thought about, there are a couple of things that I thought about, and like Venerable Jue said, of course, you know, it's okay also if you don't believe, still doing good and living a good life has its benefits. And when you die, you'll find out whether you have something more to go forward or not. So you have a win-win situation if you take that aspect. But also, if you want to consider yourself to be a Buddhist, the understanding and acceptance of rebirth is important, because the Buddhist teaching is about ending rebirth. So how can you end rebirth if you don't believe in rebirth? If this is only one life and you just live it however you want, then it's not a big deal, right? It's quite a simple way to live life. This is the materialistic view that that you have, that this body and this mind, when it's finished, that's it. So it's actually not too bad. You can live a reasonably good life and fine. But the problem is, it's not the case. But how do you find it? Because this is an important question, right? Because you need something. So one of the things that I look into is, how do you explain with kids? You know, kids that are about 3 years of age, who can speak like 7 or 8 different languages fluently, when other 3-year-olds are barely managing to speak a sentence in that language, right? Or play piano, like Beethoven, they've never been to piano classes, or these kinds of really things. Where did that come from? That's an interesting thing to, if there was no previous life. So that's one thing I would like to look at to understand this thing. Another thing, now if we have only one life, we should be all given exactly the same, right? Otherwise it's so unfair. Why are some people beautiful, some people ugly, some people smart, some people not so smart, some people rich, some people poor. You know, all these, some people are sick, even since birth, some people are really healthy. Why is there a huge variety at the time of birth? You know, again, that Buddhist teaching of karma and vipaka, that is actions and consequences, are what makes us who we are this life. So we had previous lives, and that's what made who we are now. So it kind of makes sense to me to look at that way, because otherwise I can't understand why are we so different. It's so unfair that I'm like this. I would like to be like somebody else, maybe, you know. So this is another way to think about the possibility that there is birth. There is also a lot of research done on little kids who have memories of their past lives. They talk in great detail, and then they can go back. Maybe this is like a boy who's in Australia, who says that he was somewhere in China in a small village in such and such a place. And then you go back and you actually find out all those details to be true. So there are lots of research on that. But one of the most fascinating things, again, for me, was also reading about the near-death experiences. So this, again, was a very big eye-opener, even for the people. So even people who had materialistic views, their view did change when they had a near-death experience, because they realized life didn't just end there, but there is more to life than this. But also when they saw that whole life review, they realized that their actions have a consequence on where they are going to head. So that's also interesting. These I'm just mentioning in brief, so people who want it can explore these avenues to get a better understanding, or have a little bit more substantial stuff to base your understanding. But another very important thing, this was pointed out by Ajahn Brahmali in one of his talks, was that one of the things that we have, one of the faculties that we need to have as a Buddhist is faith or confidence. And that is the enlightenment and the wisdom of the Buddha and his teaching. So the Buddha says there is rebirth. So we have confidence in our teacher. It is also a good reason to believe it. It sounds kind of strange because it feels like blindly believing, but how did you go to school and learn? Like when you go to school, like when you were little, when you first started schooling, your mom or dad would have told, you know, the teacher, listen to the teacher. She knows, she or he knows, and you learn from them. So they build up that confidence. So then the kids go and you learn, right? And then when you say, okay, 1 + 1, you know, 1 apple versus another apple, 2 apples. So they realize, oh yeah, what teacher said is correct. So but in order to even learn, you have to have a degree of faith and confidence in the person and what they teach. Then you can apply it to your own life and then find out whether it's true or not. So therefore, that faith and confidence in the Buddha and his teaching is also a very good reason to believe in rebirth. And the last thing is also, when you develop deep meditation, you can yourself go back into your past life. That's the best way. That's the most solid way that you yourself can find your past life. So that requires deep meditation, but it is possible. And there are people in this day and time who's done it as well. And if you want to try it out, well, that is also possible. So it's not like a blind belief.
Very good. Thank you so much, Aya. Okay, we have time only for one last question, and this is a question for Venerable Jue. The question is this: if there is no self and everything is impermanent, who is practicing compassion?
No, who? Oh my goodness. You know, this is the famous chant, Gong An.
That's why I thought I'd direct it to you.
Who is meditating? Who is breathing? Right? And who is going on these cycles of rebirth? So who? I think what is brilliant about Buddhism and has really attracted me is that Buddhism is able to deal with paradoxes. There are so many paradoxes in our lives. And what's very important is our ability to be able to just say, well, let's live with it. So in Mahayana Buddhism, we say that at every moment, there are these conditions coming together to make up who I am. So I'm afraid that Jue is real, even though I'm pixelated to you at the moment. I may appear pixelated, but I do exist. So if I bump my head against the wall, it's going to hurt. And it's a big blue-black mark. There'll be this big bruise tomorrow, so that it exists. However, that big blue-black bruise will disappear in perhaps, hopefully, at my age in a month's time. So that's the impermanence. So at that moment that I'm kind to someone, the inverted commas I was there to give that compassion. But at the same time, I mustn't hang on to it, say, that was me, Jue, that was kind. Now I must go down onto the karmic record book as having got a positive kindness in there. The minute I get attached to any of these in my savings bank, I'm afraid that our practice has just gone backwards. So it's this very interesting paradox that we have to live with, that we are able to do all the right things that are ethical, that are kind, that are compassionate, that are wise, with no attachment. And that is the true wisdom. And being able to go with that flow. I hope that helps.
It does. That is so beautiful. Thank you, Jue. I knew you'll be able to answer it. Is that a mind?
Wasn't me.
True. Thank you nonetheless. Thank you so much to our speakers today. We are really lucky today because we've got some amazing people to join us, and I would like to now invite two very special people to join our session, and I can see that they're here. One of them is Venerable Tashi Choedup. Hopefully we can spotlight Venerable. So Venerable is a trans-feminine Buddhist monastic called a monk. Now, Venerable has more than a decade of experience. Hello. Hello. And she has had more than a decade of experience in human rights and community work. Tashi will be sharing with us about Tonglen practice today. The other speaker who will be joining us is Dr. Pema Düddul. And Pema, are you there, Doctor? Yes, hello. So Dr. Pema is the co-director of Jalu Center for Buddhist Practice. Pema has a doctorate in creative writing and is a published author. So Pema will be teaching us about a very special practice. Now, Pema, I don't know whether it's called R practice or AH practice.
Ah.
I was saying to Sinsin, is it R? Or
It's
is an acronym? Okay, well, I'm really excited to learn more about the R practice and also about the Tonglen practice as well. So perhaps we can start first with Venerable Tashi, if you can start first and just take us through the Tonglen practice. What is it? And guide us through that. And with more time, we will also then have Dr. Pema to take us through the R practice.
Sure. Thank you. It's always nice to be back at Metta Center, even though online. Very glad to see you all here. Thank you for having me for this session today. Tonglen is a Tibetan practice. Before we kind of, I've also want to thank the earlier panelists for quite an interesting discussion, I think. Thank you, both venerables, for that really lively presentation of things. Thank you. Well, like we all know, Buddha taught all kinds of things, and mostly if you want to talk about any of Buddha's teachings, they all, in a sense, go against the grain. In a sense, they go against the mainstream understanding of life and the way, life is understood or seen, whether it is 2,500 years ago or all the way 2,500 years later now, it continues to be relevant in that sense, right? So Tonglen, well, in a sense, one can think about it as a radical practice because as a practice, it's also going against the grain, going against the mainstream understanding, where, of course, most of us do want to be happy. I mean, all of us want to be happy, right? In that sense. And whether we actively wish other people to be happy or not, we want to be happy, at least, right? So, and at least we intentionally don't put in so much of thought and work in, wishing for harm for others. But in Tonglen, it's quite, radically quite opposite. You're not really talking about your happiness so much, right? You're talking about other people's happiness. In Tibetan Tonglen, Tongwa means giving, essentially giving what, right? Giving your happiness, your virtuous karma to other beings, to other people, other beings. Len is basically, taking other people's negative karma, other people's suffering upon yourself. I mean, to kind of describe it in a verse from Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, it basically says, it basically reads as, may all sentient beings suffering ripen on me, and may all my happiness and virtuous karma ripen on other beings, right? That's the wish you do. But also, I think it's interesting as you do this practice to keep in mind, I think, that we are not doing this to be saviors of the universe. We are not doing it from a position, oh, I'm going to save all the beings, from their suffering, kind of, where, I'm all powerful, I can do this kind of thing. But more, I think, as much as the practice is about taking on other people's suffering, I think it is about being our own savior, because the practice essentially is trying to destroy our self-cherishing ego, our, the me, which is so solid and so strong all the time. It is slowly trying to dismantle that me, right? Slowly dismantle that I. So in a sense, you're doing this practice to be your own savior, not to be savior of the entire world in that sense. And it's essentially as a practice to develop compassion, right? And expand the ability of our compassion, the possibility of our compassion, I think. I don't know how many of you are familiar. There is a holy river called Ganges in India, which also gets referred a lot of times in a lot of suttas, both Mahayana, I'm sure Theravada also. But also largely in Hinduism, Ganges is supposed to be this river, holy river. If you take a dip in the river, it kind of cleans away all your negative karma. It washes away all your negative karma. That is the quality of the river that is believed to be. So you take a dip in it in order to clean away, wipe away all of your negative karma. So once someone asked, okay, Ganges is this great holy river that cleans away everyone's, negative karma, everyone's negativities and defilements. So what happens to Ganges, who is cleaning away and accumulating all these negativities, all these defilements? What becomes of Ganges in this process, right? So the answer that was given back, I think, was that Ganges as a river, as a mother river, has this immense ability of compassion, this great compassion, that whatever she does it with this great compassion. So she is not really, accumulating anything on herself. She's pure with that compassion. So she's not accumulating any negativity that is cleaning of all the beings, right? I think Tonglen need to be done. One, it can be used to develop compassion, but also it has to be done with some intention of compassion, right? That I am here for other beings as much as for myself, right? I am here to, dismantle and destroy my ego, but at the same time think about other people's, other beings' well-being in the process. I think in that sense, like one of the teachers, Zongza Gyalmen Khense Rinpoche, says that, Buddha's teaching should dismantle your ego, dismantle your I, destroy it fully. But at the same time, while the destruction of your ego is happening, you're supposed to hold compassion for other people's ego, which is often the most difficult job, I think. The job is not simply destroying your ego, but the job is also, ensuring that you're compassionate to other people's ego. Because, you can destroy your ego. You can't do anything about other people's ego other than being compassionate to it. And that really is difficult, I think. And Tonglen can help in all of this process, I think. So we'll quickly kind of do a meditation, see how the practice, what we do in the practice, and then see if there are any questions, any thoughts that come up. Is that okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. So everyone, if we can settle into, whatever posture, essentially that keeps you alert and awake. And, if sitting makes you fall asleep, please don't sit. If lying, on your backs keeps you awake and alert, please lie on your back, which is perfectly fine, I think. End of the day, we are able to meditate, we are able to focus, we are able to contemplate. That should be the agenda, I think. The posture can be secondary to it, I think. So we be our own judge what posture works. Lying back, sitting straight, conventionally speaking, sitting straight apparently helps, at least for most people, I think it does. Straight back, and cross legs if possible. If you're sitting on ground, you can close your eyes gently, not too tight. And if you're sitting cross-legged or if you're sitting on a chair, make sure your arms are not close to your body, but there's some gap between your armpits for the air to freely flow through. Yeah. Take a couple of deep breaths. Both your hands can rest on your knees or in your lap, whatever is comfortable. Just bring your mind to the current moment, wherever you are. The place we are sitting, to this session, to this practice. Let go of any thoughts, from the rest of the day. Let go of any worries of tomorrow. Let come back to this present moment. And gently place your focus on your breathing. You can place your focus in front of your nostrils or either on your abdomen. Feeling the sensation of air going in and coming out. Do not force your air in or out. Do not manipulate it in any way, but simply focus on the natural pace of your breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. But next to one moment, we try and settle into our breathing, into a relaxed posture. And focus that is set on our breathing. At any point you feel distracted, gently bring back your focus to your breathing. Whatever the thoughts that arise, whatever the distraction that comes, the moment you recognize it, gently come back to your breathing. Remember, the practice here is to keep coming back to your breathing. It is common for the mind to wander away, and whenever that happens, keep coming back to your breathing. Now slowly imagine the inner purity of your mind, the deepest dimension of your mind, our inner wisdom, our Buddha nature, our potential to achieve full awakening. Imagine it as a small white radiant sphere of light at the center of your heart, right in your chest, at the level of your heart. With each in-breath, imagine breathing more and more white light into the sphere of light at the center of your chest. Imagine the light becoming stronger and stronger with your each in-breath. Now in the space in front of you, imagine your future self. Imagine yourself sitting right in front of you, facing you quietly. And you can imagine all your past, present, and potential future sufferings in the form of a black smoke filling the entire body of your future self. Imagine looking into your own eyes as if staring at a mirror, and from your heart, say to yourself, how wonderful it would be if I were free from these sufferings. May I be free of all sufferings and its causes. Now with every in-breath, imagine drawing that black smoke out of the body of your future self and bringing it into the sphere of light at your heart. Completely dissolving it there. With each in-breath, think, may I be truly free of all suffering. With every in-breath, with compassion, dissolving and extinguishing your suffering and mental afflictions at your heart. Now imagine that black smoke has been completely extinguished without a trace. Imagine your future self is completely free from all the suffering and take delight in it. Rejoice and feel joy for yourself. Now arouse the thought, how wonderful it would be if I had happiness and its causes. May I be truly be well and happy. Now with every out-breath, imagine rays of light filling and surrounding the body and mind of your future self. Imagine this light transforms into everything you need, both material needs and inner qualities. Imagine sending it all out to your future self. Imagine your body becomes more and more filled with this white light. With every out breath, breathe out the light of loving kindness, sending to yourself whatever you need to be happy. Imagine you found the happiness that is your heart's desire and rejoice. Now bring to mind someone close to you, a loved one, someone you know who has some problems at this moment. It could be physical or mental suffering. Picture that person clearly as if they are seated right in front of you. Try to imagine what they are currently experiencing. Try to put yourself in their situation of that particular suffering. Imagine their experience. And in this way, generate a strong wish for them to be free of this suffering. Visualize that pain, suffering, in the form of a black smoke, filling their entire body. And seeing this suffering is really weighing them down, stopping them from being their best. Imagine looking into their eyes and generate a strong wish how wonderful it would be if they're free from that suffering and that causes of suffering. Arouse that willingness of yours, wanting to take away their suffering from them so that they would be free from it. And with each in-breath, breathe in with compassion, drawing the suffering out of their body, straight into the center of your chest. Where that black smoke immediately disappears, dissolves into the light, right in your heart. with every in-breath, think, may they be truly free from this suffering that weighs them down. With every in-breath, breathe in with compassion all the black smoke of the suffering right into your body, right into your chest. And let it dissolve into the white light at the center of your heart. Now that the black smoke is completely vanished, imagine the relief of that loved one, finding their freedom from their suffering, and feel a sense of joy that they are finally free from their suffering. And if you know this person well, you probably also know what this person would love to have, what makes them happy. And from your heart, say to them, may you have happiness and causes of happiness. So with every out breath, breathe out rays of white light from your heart, sending them all the things they would love and they would need. And imagine their body becomes more and more filled with happiness, with this white light. With every out breath, breathe out the light of loving kindness, sending them all the love, all the happiness. Having received this love, having received this happiness, imagine their joy. And rejoice in it. And now we can bring to our mind a stranger, someone we don't know very well. Picture that person right in front of you. It could be someone you see most of the days while you're traveling to work. It could be a neighbor in your neighborhood that you never spoken to. Picture that stranger right in front of you. And perhaps you can only imagine any kind of problems or suffering that this person must be, carrying around right now. Imagine their suffering in the form of a black smoke filling their entire body, from the crown of their head to the soles of their feet. And generate a strong, heartfelt wish. May they be free of the suffering and its causes. May they find freedom out of the suffering. And now with every in-breath, imagine drawing that black smoke out of their body, bringing it into the center of your heart, breathing it in completely, and having it dissolved in the white light at the center of your heart. With every in-breath, breathe in with compassion, dissolving and extinguishing their sufferings, physical or mental. Dissolving it into the white light, the center of your heart. Now imagine that black smoke completely disappeared without a trace. Imagine they are experiencing relief of their sufferings. And then we can only imagine what they would like to have in their lives, material needs, inner qualities, any kind of happiness that fulfills their life. And with a strong wish, say to them, may they be happy, may you find the happiness and the causes of that happiness. And with each out breath, send out a white light filling their entire body. Open your heart to that person, and with every out breath, breathe out the light of your own joy, the light of loving kindness, light of your own happiness, and send it out to them. Having received all that light of joy and happiness, you can imagine them experiencing that happiness and rejoice. Now, bring to your mind a person with whom you're having some difficulty at this moment in your life. Someone that you might disagree with. And try to imagine that person is sitting right in front of you. If it proves to be difficult, just be gentle with yourself. Take a moment to just imagine this person right in front of you. Gently try and soften any resistance that may arise in the body. And invite this person into your heart for this moment. And if you know this person, perhaps you know what kind of suffering they have. Perhaps that is why you find them so disagreeable, because they carry around a lot of negativity, suffering of their own, and that weighs them down. So imagine a black smoke filling their entire body. This black smoke symbolizing all the qualities, the mental afflictions that we disagree with, that are disagreeable to us. And now try to open your heart and generate a heartfelt wish. May they be free from suffering and its causes. From your heart, say to them, may you be free of suffering that weighs you down. And then with each in-breath, with compassion, imagine drawing that black smoke out of their body and into the sphere of light right at the center of your heart, breathing in all that black smoke, representing their suffering, taking it in, dissolving it in the light right at the center of your heart. With every in-breath, breathe with compassion. Breathe all that black smoke right into the center of your heart. Now imagine they are free from this suffering and generate a sense of joy. Seeing them free from suffering, now imagine what they would like to have to be happy, to be fulfilled. And with each out breath, send them all that in the form of white light, filling their entire body and mind. So with every out breath, breathe out the light of happiness, of joy, and send it out to this person. And then visualize that having received this light of happiness and joy, this person is happy and joyful, relieved of all the suffering. And rejoice in that. Having taken in the suffering of a stranger, of a loved person, of a person that you disagree with, that you have difficult time with, and sending them all happiness and joy. Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever the state of mind you're in right now, sit with it for a moment. Be with it in the rawness of that experience. Gently, slowly open your eyes.
Thank you so much, Venerable. That was
Thank
really,
you.
thank you. What a beautiful practice.
So essentially, Tonglen, you can, of course, do it one person with one person when they are sick, when they are ill, or when they are having difficult time, where they are a loved one or a stranger or someone you really don't like at the given point. Or you can also sometimes simply do it even when you are experiencing, suffering, when you are going through a difficult time. You can also do Tonglen for people who probably are in similar situation, right? There's so many people who have are in similar kind of troubles or similar kind of suffering. So we can also do Tonglen with all of those people. So it does not need to be limited to one person. It can be all expansive because there's so much of suffering we all share, whether we like it or not, right? So, and I think, and always going back to the part of compassion is always good, that, rooting it in the intent of compassion, that I am doing it to develop my own compassion. I'm doing it to practice compassion towards other people, other beings, right? And also not with this art. I mean, essentially, it is good to not get into this state of, I'm saving people, I'm the savior kind of thing. That could be self-defeating, I think.
Thank you so much, Venerable. I'll now like to invite Pema Düddul to now share with us about a different type of practice, which is meditation. So, Pema, what is this meditation?
So we've got 5 minutes. So I think what we'll do is, rather than talk about it, we will just do it. So I'll just give you the briefest kind of outline. So the R practice is based on the Prajnaparamita sutras, particularly on the perfection of wisdom, mother, in one syllable. So, there's many different Prajnaparamita sutras. There's 1,000 verses, there's 100 verses. This one is a single syllable one, which is R. And it implies that all of the wisdom of emptiness teachings are contained in that syllable, in R. And it crosses all the yanas. So it's there in the Sutra yana, it's there in the Mahayana, it's there in the Vajrayana, and it's there in Dzogchen and Mahamudra as well. So I learned a particular version of this from Chogyal Nampo Nobu, who taught the Dzogchen style of doing the R practice. And also, I was also taught by my partner, actually, another kind of the version of the R practice, which is a more simpler kind of a way. It's very simple, but there's actually 2 very simple ways to do it. And I think, so the thing about the R practice is, it's the condensed essence of all the Dharma. It's the condensed essence of the 3 jewels. It's the condensed essence of wisdom and compassion. The thing about wisdom and compassion is that they're co-emergent. They emerge as one at the same time. When compassion emerges, wisdom emerges, which wisdom of emptiness. When wisdom of emptiness emerges, compassion naturally arises. They're co-emergent. So you don't necessarily need to cultivate one over the other. You can do a practice that does one and it will fulfill the arising of the other. The R practice is more on the emptiness side of things. So what we do is we recite the syllable R, which is also a mantra. In Vajrayana, we call it like a mantra. So we just recite the R, and we do it in a very specific kind of a way. So we do it like on the out breath. And as we're doing it, we relax the entire body and we let go of all the kind of energy and tension in the nervous system and any kind of tightness in the body. We just let it all go as we're saying the R. And it's meant to be like the sigh of relief you experience when it's a really hot day and you're easing into a cold pool, or it's a really cold day and you're easing into a warm bath. It's sort of like a feeling of like relief and letting go and relaxing. So something that is not commonly talked about in the Dharma is that the Buddha taught this thing called the 7 factors of awakening. So these were essential steps to enlightenment, to awakening, and they were also the states or stages that you move through to become awakened. And a really important one of those for the Dzogchen tradition is relax, to relax. So that's one of the 7 factors of awakening, to be relaxed. Also one there is joy, And it's not appreciative joy when it's listed in the 7 factors of awakening. The word for it translates often as rapture or joy. So it's not being happy about other people's joy. It's like literally to be feeling joy ourselves. So these are essential states we need to move through to awakening. And so the R practice totally relaxes us. And then it's a sound. So we listen as we're making the sound, and we follow the sound as it diminishes into stillness. And then we rest in that stillness. So it's a shamatha kind of a meditation at the end of the practice. So you say the ah, you follow the sound into emptiness, and then or stillness, and then you rest there. You just sit in shamatha, in the silence, in stillness. And according to the Dzogchen and Mahamudra teachings, when we're very relaxed, our natural state, the Buddha nature, or in Tibetan they would say rigpa, the true nature of mind, it reveals itself naturally. No efforts are required. It just happens when we're relaxed because it's our natural state. So the R practice is a very short, quick way to get to that natural, restful state. And then, of course, compassion in that natural, restful state arises naturally. It doesn't have to be cultivated. Likewise, rest and ease and joy, they arise naturally because they're our natural state. So the other interesting thing about this practice is that the R syllable is actually the sound of the out breath. So the condensed essence of all the Prajnaparamita teachings, and the condensed essence of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the condensed essence of all of the Dharma is constantly on our breath, always with us. So we don't have to really do anything. The Dharma is ever present with us, and the out breath is about letting go. So it's about letting go, surrendering into a state of rest, and just being with the absolute state of our true nature, of the Dharma, of the Buddha nature, etc. So this is a very short sort of instruction. So there's 2 ways to do it. As I said, you can do kind of like the way I was taught by Chogyal Nangpa Nubu, which is to do this sort of like a sound of like relief on the R, on the out breath, and then rest in a natural state. But the other way that we know to do, and it is actually just as good, is just to do a very simple, gentle, relaxed R. It doesn't have to be forceful or anything. And or if you like really don't have any energy at all, if you're unwell or sick, you can just listen to your out breath, and the R's are there. It's there naturally. And then you follow that sound or that movement into stillness, and you rest there. So it's a very simple practice. So it sounds a little, I used to do this practice all over the place, on the bus, in the park. But then I noticed that people were looking at me a little bit strangely. So I tend to do more in private at home now, because it is a sort of it is a sound of like relief, and people like might go, oh, why is that person making that sound? So if you're okay with people looking at you, you can do it on the bus, on the train, anywhere. But generally we do it sort of privately, but it does make this sort of sound. So the soft and gentle way to do it, and to just listen as it receives interpretations, is just go ah, and then relax. So usually so it's called the single R practice in its full name. So that means you're not accumulating or repeating. You're just doing it once, and then you sort of rest in stillness, and then you can do it again if you want. But it's not something you accumulate or you pursue or you chase. It's meant to be very effortless, and you just go into stillness and rest there. So as I said, you're sort of on the out breath, but you don't do a forceful in breath or anything, just completely naturally. And we do tend to get into a meditation posture if you want to. You don't have to be in any particular posture. We use the 7-point posture of Bodhicitta, which is spine more or less straight. The eyes are open. The tongue rests on the top palate behind the front teeth. The mouth is slightly open, so we're not breathing just through the nose, we're breathing through the mouth and the nose, whatever is natural for us. Our hands are on our knees, palms down, and our shins are kind of crossed. So it's not necessarily lotus posture. You can be in a chair and do it with your feet on the ground, but your shins need to be touching. There's an energetic reason for that. But anyway, but also you can just do it in any posture you like. You can be walking along. I do it when I'm just walking along. So then you say ah, and you listen, and you follow the sound into stillness. So I'll do it, and you can all do it with me. The best way to get this practice is to just do it. There's no reading or talking or study required. It's just do it. And as you say the ah, you let go of all the nervous tension in your body, of all the tightness in your muscles, of any kind of thing you're doing, and you just let go into stillness. Okay, so I'll do it. You can do it with me. The sound is an interesting one. It's like a sigh of relief. So, but you can just do it however you like. There's another version of it which is more like a song, they kind of sing it, but the way we do it is more sort of gentle. Okay. Just breathing normally. And then we say, ah. Ah. So we're over time now, so we won't sit for too long, but I'm just going to repeat. It's very simple. You just say, ah, there's nothing more to it. You just listen to the sound going into stillness, and then you rest in that stillness. And again, I'll just repeat. In the 7 factors of awakening, which is one of the earliest teachings we have from the Buddha, he's making very clear there are these 7 states we must move through to become enlightened. They include joy, and not appreciative joy alone, but that's a very good thing, obviously, but just joy, just to be in a state of joy. That's essential. And also essential is to be relaxed, to feel relaxed, be unworried, to be content. You know, a content and unworried mind is not an angry, jealous, greedy, impatient mind. A joyful, relaxed mind is quiet, it's still, it's loving. Because love, compassion, kindness, evenness, they're our natural state. They're the only emanations of the Buddha nature, the only ones. So to do this practice, when we rest in stillness, inevitably joy will rise, inevitably love will rise, inevitably compassion will rise, and inevitably a state of contentment and evenness or equanimity will rise. It's natural, it's part of our nature. So I'll just really quickly read what we call a pithy instruction. It's like 1 sentence about this practice. And it says, so arouse joy, rest at ease on the ah, and let everything else be as it is. So this is really the epitome of the just chill out, you know. And this comes again, I'll tell you again, this comes from the Tibetan tradition, but it has roots in the Sutrayana and in the Mahayana. I received it from Chogyal Nankanobu, who, by the way, today is his death anniversary. He died today a number of years ago. And also there's a transmission that comes down to us from Guru Rinpoche, who established Buddhism in Tibet. So this is the R practice. It has its roots in the Prajnaparamita Sutra. It's the condensed essence of everything. You can literally just do this. Okay, thanks, folks. I think it's time for vegan gelato for everyone and a nice...
Thank you so much, Pema, and thank you for understanding as well. And I do apologize, we didn't have enough time for you right at the end. But as usual, you share the Dhamma in such a succinct and clear way. So, amazing. So thank you again. And thank you to all of our speakers and presenters today. It has been quite an incredible session. And I also thank you all for joining us at quite late notice. We did have another program, and now having all of you come to our aid, and today was such a great blessing to have all of us here together with you. So thank you everyone for joining. I really hope you'll be able to join our Metta Convention weekend. So we have a 2-day full weekend program. The speakers who were here today, they will be joining us at the weekends as well. We've got other things happening. Tomorrow we're going to throw a big party where we're just going to feed everyone for free, basically. And we would love to have you there. Nunten will be one of those really great sponsors that we have. He'll be there to share some really nice and yummy Chinese food. We've also got some Malaysian food as well as Sri Lankan food and also Korean. Had to think for now. We had some Korean pancakes tomorrow, so please come along. It'll be great. And for those who can't see what's in the chat and all those people who are watching this on YouTube, we will be putting in the description below some information about the R practice, as well as also Nun Tien Institute and also Santi Forest Monastery. So check out the links below. Thank you everyone so much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you at our other Metta Centre events. Thank you and good night.